Okay, so I'm excited to introduce our next guest speaker, Michelle Engstrom. Michelle is a graphic designer who specializes in using design principles to improve communication for users of all abilities. Michelle's unique background of graphic design, legal, and instructional design experience has led her to become the SME for accessible documents at her agency. And in her bio, she says, I'm sure my neurodivergent creativity has something to do with it also. So, with that, I will let you, Michelle, take over with your presentation. Pretty is accessible. I'm going to hide myself from the screen, but I'll be here if you need anything.
Awesome. Sounds great. Well, for those who like to have a visual description, I am Michelle. I am a 34-year-old white Latina with dark brown wavy hair that goes past my shoulders. I'm wearing a black top and decided to do my makeup for y'all today. I hail from the mean streets of Minnesota, so Alan, we're neighbors. See you there in the comments. I see Canada, so our friendly neighbors to the north. um, and I am going to be presenting close to what we see here on the screen. I think a lot of us have received similar emails from similar important people that state that, either they have a document or an idea for a document and they just want us to make it quote unquote pretty. Now, I get this way more often than I would like to get it because I work for a government agency in Minnesota. I'm not allowed to specifically state which one, just for legal matters, but I also have my own side business, which makes it very difficult for me to get examples. So said legal agency that I work for, or maybe I'm a spy. We don't know. Um, Constantly are asking me to make their documents either look pretty or have a pretty document that they would like me to force to be accessible, but as we all know, you can't or at least at the very least shouldn't go from a completely inaccessible document and try to cram accessibility onto it. So I'm sure we all dislike getting this email, but I am here to let you know the good news that pretty is in fact accessible. And this comes from someone who actually started their career at. I love these emojis. I'm just saying, guys, this comes up from the bottom. I'm seeing as I speak, I see the emojis come up. I feel like it's like a round of applause, but in emoji. Um, so before I even figured out what I wanted to do with my life, I did art. And with a dad who is in IT, it clearly went towards graphic design and digital art. I had a drawing tablet. I got Adobe pretty early on before the subscription days. And so graphic design was always my side gig. Uh, Started off drawing people's original characters, people's OCs, D&D characters, their fanfic characters, and moved my way up and started to just make a buck here and there. And then, of course, coming from I see Nancy's a D&D player. I have to say I obsessed way more over creating characters than I did the actual gameplay. But I, of course, coming from, uh, so I live in the US, Minnesota. My parents are from Chile, and that's in South America. They they're the quintessential, immigrant parents who, viva Chile, Andre, but Andrea, viva Chile indeed. But my parents, they just wanted me to take advantage of being in the educational system they wish that they could have had. Um, and so while art was like, that's cool, that's really cool that you could do that, and you can always do that on the side, but are you going to be a doctor or a lawyer? So I chose lawyer. And I went that route. And so my first job out of college was a legal assistant. And I was doing that for a while. I graduated in 2011. So, we all dealt with the recession. And the only way I got my job really is that I spoke Spanish. So I got to answer phones for the attorneys, and I got to make their documents. And that's really started with compliance and how to get more instructional documents, and then with my need to consistently make everything look nice. It kind of balanced each other out. I got burnt out working at a legal office because some attorneys just aren't nice. And I made my way over to the courts, and I just celebrated my 10-year anniversary there because it was legal adjacent enough for me that I enjoyed being there. Um, and thank you, everyone. But it was not as soul crushing sounding as law school sounded. So I stayed in the courts. I worked my way up. Muchísimas gracias, Gabriela. But I worked my way up from frontline court work, and then I, made my way to being a lead worker where I would train new employees. Then I went behind the scenes to administration, and eventually made my way over to learning and development, and here I am. So along the way, ADA laws kind of not really followed. It wasn't until 2021 that it was really taken seriously, and even then, not until the uh, words and thoughts. Not until recently was it really taken seriously, when the Justice Department really made it pretty serious. So, finally, they are listening to me. And I'm getting a lot more emails if I can make things pretty. So, the good news is I'm pretty darn good at it, and I don't like to gatekeep it. So, when I get documents, whether they start off as accessible but maybe not so pretty, um, and I apologize, a lot of words and names are taken out of here. So this is left aligned, not justified. It is accessible, just a lot of words taken out. So I was given this and asked if I could make it look nice. So this is completely accessible. They used headings, they used everything that they should. It just looked really blah. So I made it a newsletter, and this is also accessible. It just, gives a better first impression. It's more aesthetic. It's nicer to look at. People definitely, I got a lot of feedback that people enjoyed receiving the newsletter from then on. So after this one was implemented, but then there are some times where I get a document, and this is for a great service in Minnesota called the Legal Kiosk Project that allows people who do not have access to technology, computers, to be able to go and use one of their legal kiosks to either meet with an attorney, download, print, scan documents. This document looks really good. You look at it and you would assume it might be uh, accessible, but it's not. I ran the accessibility checker and it had a lot of issues. Main one being that the tags are kind of all over the place. So after I worked with the uh, L&D team on this project, they kind of narrowed down the information that they wanted to keep on the slide or flyer. And then we created this, which, if I do say so myself, looks a lot nicer. But more importantly, it is accessible. The two issues, as most of us know, that are still showing up on PDF is to check the logical reading order and to check that contrast is met, which it is. And so this was completely accessible as well. And it's not just the PDF checker. I just don't have access to the other checkers on my current computer, but it does meet the logical reading order, the tag order, and all that fun stuff that isn't necessarily picked up by the accessibility checker. Now, another thing that I've been noticing as a trend in kind of our community here are documents that are posted to LinkedIn, whether that be services that we give out or that be resumes. And I do have permission to use this. I will give Eric Eastland a shout out. He is an amazing instructional designer. He is looking for employment. So if you need somebody, he is your guy. But he pulled this lovely resume from Canva. It is a template that he used because he wanted to have a more aesthetic looking resume. So he made it pretty. Unfortunately, I looked into it, quickly pulled, and it was not accessible. Mainly, the tags were a mess. I think the first heading was a heading 6 in the tags, and it started right here. The reading order started somewhere down here. I had to hunt for it, but it was not accessible. It was pretty. If you look at it, it does look very nice. But we can do better. And so with his permission and a little coaxing, I offered him an accessible version. It does pull over, so it looks almost the same. There's some differences, some design choices that help with accessibility, but the tagging order is intact. It does read, the logical reading order is there. So whether you're starting from accessible bland to pretty, whether you're starting from like looks nice, we can make it better, or very beautiful, completely inaccessible, the two things do not need to be separate. We can definitely put them two together. And that's because I just don't think that they're at odds together, which seems to be this prevailing thought out there. So I like to look at what each means, and it's way easier to explain what accessible means than what pretty means. Because as we all know, I'm sure all of y'all have sat through some of the other wonderful presentations. We know that accessibility aims to be perceivable, operable, understandable, and robust. That's what accessibility's goal is. We just want everything to be equitable regardless of your abilities, whether you have a disability or not. And yes, Bernadette, definitely not ATS friendly when it's a pretty resume. But the good thing about accessibility is that it's also ATS friendly, so it has kind of a dual purpose. I mean, we shouldn't put that over accessibility, but hey, it's a perk. It like like we say, accessibility is to help everybody. So it does have those advantages. And yes, the resume that I created did have all of the pretty aesthetic aspects and was ATS friendly. Um, and yes, pretty does become accessibility for neurodivergent readers, Andrea, and I will attest to that as somebody who with neurodivergence. So for me, when I look at pretty and when I have to try to describe what that means to somebody, I heavily lean on my graphic design background. For me, pretty is things like balance and hierarchy, repetition, contrast, blah, 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 graphic design. And when I have to synthesize what graphic design is, in the end, graphic design really is all about communication. We need to be able to use all of the cool things, as Bernadette says, all of those nifty things that we learn and kind of pick up on along the way, just to communicate the things better. And if that's not accessibility, I don't know what is. So, how do we use that though? How do we break down the parts of a document or a presentation into how they communicate so that we can make them more accessible? And I was going to put in more slides to make it something that I could talk to about more, but I feel like it's probably just easier to bring up an example. So that's what I did. I pulled this template from Word. It is I believe it was under business flyer. As you see, your partner for success. And I mostly went with this one because if we look down at the very bottom, it says that the accessibility is good. Hey, they checked it. It's good, guys. We can use this one. Um, it, I'm going to spoil the ending here. It's not. So I brought it over to Adobe Acrobat and we're going to quickly run the accessibility checker. And right off the bat, I mean, we see the common ones, check the logical reading order and color contrast there. I did check the color contrast, and this red kind of color does fine on white. It does not do fine on this tan color. The blue text on the tan color also doesn't do great. It's pretty low, so I wouldn't have made that choice. Logical reading order, it says to manually check it, so let's manually check it. It goes from partner to success, to this path, to this random image in the middle, to this paragraph in the middle. Suffice to say, the reading order is not quite there. When we go to tags, we see that it used tables for layouts. This is an art piece, apparently. This lovely paragraph is so compelling that it's art. But it's really a paragraph. Regardless, it's not set up right in the source document, so it's pooling kind of weird over here. And I see a question from Karen. It says, when I'm pulling from the reading order, I mean the order that the screen reader would read it. So you always want to check. Screen readers, it's my understanding, go from this tagged order often. So it will go from table, the tag order, but can also be used to go through this reading order. So it can also go through this one. So I see Gabrielle's putting in an answer. So yes, this is the order that it usually reads. Tag order is sometimes used mostly in terms of like if somebody is pulling up that they want to look at all tables, they pull up table tags for navigation. So this one would be a jumbled mess. And keyboard users, as Andrea also puts it. So, I mean, they're just both really all over the place. So this really doesn't pass in any sense of the word on that. Title failure, I mean, that's often the sense. It's a really easy fix. I wouldn't blame the template for that. That would have just been that I just quickly threw it over here. But alternative text was one that I was a little surprised that it didn't have alternative text for an image until I realized that it seemed to be a nested. Like I believe this is supposed to be a logo here. And it's probably just meant to be replaced out. Regardless, I just think that I still think that people are going to use this thinking that it is an accessible template and they don't have to do anything with it. And instead, we really got to look at some of the things on the page and kind of think through as from a design perspective, what are we trying to communicate and how do we get down to the bottom of that so that we know the rules well enough to bend them. And one of the main things, and I'm sure we're all aware, is the tables can be a nightmare when it comes to accessibility. I personally hate tables. I've had to deal with 60-page tables. So I hate them with a passion. However, there is a time and place for tables, simple data, heading rows with a column header if you need. However, if you're just using it for simply layouts, I think there are better ways. For example, here, if we think what we're trying to accomplish with a layout when it comes to a table, we're trying to force the reader to read horizontally. As we know, we read down vertically. If we have something reading our screen, it reads vertically. We're trying to force it to move horizontally instead. And somebody who's just using their vision, a sighted user, can look at this and our brains kind of do that automatically when we see columns. So instead of using tables, which need a bunch more remediation when we get to a PDF, I try to use columns wherever I can get away with it. And for those who don't know, those are in the layout. Use columns. You can go to more columns control, whether there's 2, if they're in equal column width, how much the spacing is, and if one is bigger than the other one. Wish I could make this bigger. I don't think I have my zoom in capabilities turned on here. So columns instead of tables, unless you have a header row or a header column that you think it would be necessary for the information in your table to harken back to. So if they need to know that, this is under this category, all of my Y input is harkening back to this X header. If for any reason they need to know that, that's a simple way to kind of think of it. But usually if you're just trying to get the reader to kind of scan their eye over horizontally, columns work way better for when you have when you're having templates so that people who aren't as knowledgeable can bring it over. They're better for just not having to do the same remediation over and over again in PDF. And that just means fixing the tags, fixing all of the things. So you can basically, anything, the issue with tables, you can take away the table tags and everything in PDF to make it not read as a table, but you'd have to do that every time you make a change. So it'd be easier just to do a column in the first place. And I very much like the metaphor of for baking. When it comes to accessibility, we all want accessibility baked in, because you can't add the blueberries to a blueberry muffin afterwards. It wouldn't be the same experience. So with that, there's also, when we think of what we're trying to do when we have big angry red text, usually is warn somebody. However, the warning doesn't work if there's no color. For me, big angry red text, red is warning. But then if I think about it and somebody isn't seeing the color red, that's just text. So, that's something we need to think about. And if this was indeed a warning, we can't just leave it at addressing the needs of an individual. So, some people will prefer to add, I'm going to be purposefully vague. I'm going to add an exclamation at the front to say that it's very important. And to some people, maybe that's enough to say that it's a warning. They're like, oh, well, if I add that, then of course that signifies that there's something different about this text. And, that's a step in the right direction of thinking. But then I would challenge to say someone with a neurodiverse need for more direction might look at that and be like, did they accidentally put that there? Or, is one exclamation just kind of important, or is it very important? How many exclamations? Like, if I put three exclamations, is that way more urgent? So, think over some of those things. If I don't use text to state what I mean, or there's differing amounts of urgency to some of the images or words that I use, I will usually add a key somewhere that says, if I type warning, it's high importance. If I type information, then it's low importance, for example. And then if there's other considerations for accessibility, a big one that it gets missed a lot, at least at my agency, is the title of the document, because we've gotten pretty good about getting our files named appropriately. There's no more key smashing or final number 3. But there still isn't a title placed in here. And for those who aren't aware, in Microsoft, that goes under File, Info, Properties. And under there, went to my other screen, you can add title, subject, author, manager, and company. And this is important because when somebody is looking through their documents and maybe need assistive technology, or just looking, even if you are neurodiverse, and so I myself use a lot of the technology that reads information to me, because I get headaches and get very overwhelmed by a lot of reading and type on the screen. So I do use a lot of those features, not to the point of one of the official screen readers, but sometimes I will have it search through files for me and it will read titles and some of this information here. So it's important, maybe not some of these other items at times, but if I will always put a title, and if it would matter to a sighted user what the subject is, then I would put a subject. It's teasing that out is mostly, it's very situational. But so if my title is quick reference guide, what is it a quick reference guide for? The subject might be, the project I'm working on. I would put it in the subject because quick reference guide could be for anything, for example. And then author, I mean, sometimes it who the author is matters. So those things can vary, but title, subject, and some people think company is a big one. I once again I go back and forth. I think it's a matter of debate. But I mean, if it's information a sighted user has of your document, then it should be in there. So I mean, we still have time. I am open to keep going. Like, so if I were to tackle this specific document to make an accessible version of it, the first thing I usually do is just copy down all of the text onto a new one. Let me just with plain text. Oh, it's so tiny though. I don't like it. That's a little better, maybe. So let's copy down the text, and I'm not gonna add columns or anything. I'm just gonna copy the text in the order that I would expect my users to read it. So even though it goes horizontal right now, like one column then the next, I'm just gonna add it as is. This does this to me. It leaves out the last bullet point. If somebody knows why Microsoft does that, I would be happy to know. Why is it making this a whole block? Okay. Might just keep forgetting to do that. That's why. I don't think this is necessary information, but for the sake of, like, let's say you receive this and they're like, don't change any of the words. We need all of it. Make it accessible. I'm gonna add it. The template changed the colors. We can. I'm not going to, but you could change the colors back. All right. So last part of it. So you have your words down. The first thing I would do is assign everything a type of, actually, before I do, I'm going to assume that this picture here, because it's in the middle of text and interrupting everything, we're going to pretend it's something important. So it's not just a decoration picture. We're going to say that this has some sort of meaning to it. So now make this one bigger, and we're going to, actually, I changed my mind. We're not going to make that bigger yet. We're going to make it look like this text over here first. So that's Arial 40. Just because I'm pretending that we were asked to make it look the same. That doesn't mean I would make it look exact. Just saying. This is going to be a red color. I'm not beholden to their red color, even though it did meet accessibility standards, but we'll see. Then this was all black. It is a different typeface, but from a design point of view, and for it to be cohesive, I'm gonna say that I don't see the point of switching out typefaces on that particular instance. Oh, it didn't get any of this when I copy pasted, did it? Okay, for some reason lorem ipsum here needs to be this quote, they want it in red. All right, and they have all of this. Okay, another one is, this is all size 11 font, and I know that all of these documents, when we use Word and when we export to PDF, I know that people can zoom up. I just don't like the idea that it is so small when we can make it size 12 with no hassle. I'd rather make it size 12. Size 11 in some fonts are just, they mesh the letters together too much for me, for my liking. And I think of it more as, if somebody has more of a hard time like separating out the letters so much as, a vision problem. So it's not a vision problem, they just have a hard time making out words. Larger text is going to be a nicer default, because they might not use assistive technology on the regular, so they might not have the know-how. I think of my poor mama whose first language is Spanish, obviously, and didn't, I mean, we tried to give her an iPod with all of her music on it, and she ended up giving it right back to us because she couldn't figure it out. So she's not going to figure out how to make the size of text any bigger. So these are some of the design things that I think about. Like, that's why I decide to make it bigger. That's why I decide to make it smaller. I did want to show how some of this column things, because it's been a game changer at my agency. And that's under layout, columns. And I'm going to go right to more columns, because if I click on 2 up here, it'll just make them even columns with 0.5 spacing. And that's not what it looks like in the picture over there. So I'm going to do 2, I'm going to uncheck equal column width, and I'm going to pull down the size of the gap in between the columns, just because I'd rather do that with layout spacing anyway. And I'm going to make the left column bigger. We'll see what that looks like up to 4. The section contains regions. Oh, there's text in Italian. It's not being checked. That's fine. I'm not sure why that doesn't allow me to put it in columns, guys. Hey, this is live. Let it be known. There we go. And then, so let's leave it like this just for the sake of me showing you. When we see this, and it's not quite breaking where you want it to be, we can always insert the column break. So under the same layout, next to columns, at the top here it says breaks, and it has column break, and you can force it to go where you want. For some reason, because it's not an actual bullet point right now. So you always want to insert the break where the text starts that you want it start going to the other column. So there we have it go on the other side. And then it's gonna bother me too much if I don't mess with some of these settings. So I'm gonna do so. Put it up to 4, see how it looks. I like it. And then always when I'm looking for accessibility, and make sure there's no extra spacings and keystrokes that are going to be read out loud. I like to go to Home, Paragraph, and turn on paragraph markings, so I can make sure that like there's not a bunch of enters here. That gets annoying pretty quick, I'd imagine. I did have a document that I had to remediate that had a line across the page created by a bunch of underscores that was read out, each and every underscore. There was 168 of them. I remember the number. Let's see. Oh gosh, word interpreted lorem ipsum is a different. Yes, word is like mansplaining. It likes to think it's helpful. Lorem ipsum. For those who don't know, lorem ipsum language is not a language. It is not. It is not Italian. It is not Latin. It is a made up language, and just one used by designers. I wasn't sure of that. I didn't know that. I came to my agency and I would use lorem ipsum in all of my templates, and my colleagues were like, are you writing in Spanish? No, I'm writing in design. It's fine. It's fine. Let's see. I can't think of, I guess styles. Okay. So I'm a millennial. I grew up with computers. I grew up writing all my papers in Word. I never grew up using styles, and it would not have occurred to me to use them for accessibility until I was learning about accessibility, I guess, because styles isn't just for keeping consistent styles across your document. It is what, and I know in this particular group, it's y'all know what styles are for, but I have had such a time trying to explain to management, to my colleagues who maybe aren't in the know, that styles is what gives our text semantic value from one program to the next. It is what tells PDF, how Word tells PDF that this is a heading. This is just a paragraph. So it's not an option to just not use them. You can't just change the font and the styles of the font on and have it read the same. Like, it's like programming, or how you add code to your document. And that's the best way I've been able to like explain it, because basically people are like, oh, how do I people people are so adverse to changing the way they've done things. And granted, I work at an agency that has been around for ages and are very set in their ways. But, it's the law. So I've had to find ways to make it sound like it's easier, or change management and all that, all those buzzwords that help people really embrace accessibility, because I truly believe people care deep down. People do care. It's just one more thing that's changing in the world. So if we can break it down, make it approachable, I think people are willing to do the accessibility things. We just need to figure out ways to say it. And I'm way more eloquent when I'm writing, so I was hesitant to even do this. But if I've taught you anything, it's that we don't need to make two different documents just so that one can look nice and pretty or professional and polished or however you want to say it, and have one be accessible. They're not two different things. They are the same thing. They can be the same thing. And uh, if anybody in the community ever wants help doing that, just wants a second look at a document, like I said, I'm not here to gatekeep. I would love to go over it with you. Hit me up. Um, you can always locate me on uh, LinkedIn. There's my email. My website that I have down there is a work in progress, so do not judge me. It's still in the making. I'm ADHD. I suffer from perfectionism. So it's never going to be done, guys. But you know, DM me on LinkedIn, send me an email. If you just want to chat too, that's cool. We can talk all the accessibility or design things. But otherwise, we're done unless somebody has questions or just wants to talk.
Taking a look. Thank you so much, Michelle.
Welcome.
Fantastic. Looking at the Q&A area, I'm not seeing anything. Seeing some emojis pop up there. Let me take a look. Yeah, I think that's it. Wonderful. Do you do any other speaking at all? Like, do you do conferences or anything?
I mean, I speak and do a lot of training through my through the agency.
Uh-huh.
I did do a YouTube Nico. I'm so bad at names on the spot. I have it linked on my LinkedIn, but he's in politics in Philadelphia. Nico, he did a YouTube series where he has people living with disabilities tell their stories of how basically their whole story of how they got to diagnosis. And so I did participate in that. And there's some amazing stories. So I do see a question from Molly. Do you use the headers and footers for any accessibility usage in Word, Acrobat, etc.? I do not personally, except for maybe logos. I will put those in there. Just because I see them used far too often for information that I actually do find important for everybody to know. And I suppose page numbers. I do put those in there. But I see a lot of last revised, last edited in headers and footers. And I think that's important context that everybody should know, and not all screen readers will read the header footers.
Excellent. Thank you. Okay, well, I am going to go ahead and close out this session. Michelle, thanks again. It was great having you for the event. And don't forget, everybody, the recordings are available like pretty much immediately after every session wraps up. It takes maybe less than a minute for them to show up, but you can come back later to watch the recording of this session and all the others that we've had this week. Right after we're done here, if you'd like. And with that, I'm just going to go ahead and end the session. We'll see everybody tomorrow. Let's see, I forget who we're starting with. Yes, that's right. Tejaswini Mulay. I think she's going to be logging in. She's in India, and she'll be discussing holistic, inclusive learning experiences beyond compliance. All right, we'll see everybody tomorrow. Thanks, everyone. Thanks again, Michelle.
Thank you.